Mr. Thuck is now over 60. His figure is thin, his skin darkened by the sun, and his hands are always stained with grease because of his job as a motorbike taxi driver around the village market. All his life, he hasn't wished for much, just a peaceful family, with children and grandchildren living in harmony. But sometimes, that peace is as fragile as the smoke from the kitchen at dusk. His house sits in a narrow alley, nestled among old tin roofs. Behind long-hung district market, the roof is covered with red tiles. The yard is paved with traditional bricks, and in the back stands a septic tank built back when his son was still alive. Built might be too generous, it's really just a simple brick pit, topped with a cement lid and covered by 2 broken bricks. Since How, his son, passed away in a motorbike accident 3 years ago, everything in the house has changed. People smiled less, meals turned cold, and time seemed to slow down. Day by day, Duyên, Hao's wife, is a gentle, quiet woman. After her husband died, she didn't leave like people gossiped. On the contrary, she stayed and cared for her in-laws as if they were her own family. Every morning, she swept the yard, cooked meals, and looked after Bin, their firstborn son. Anyone who saw her said she was lucky, being loved by her husband's family. But no one knew how many nights she couldn't sleep, how often she furrowed her brows and rubbed her temples, or how she would sit in silence for hours, staring out at the backyard. Mr. Thuck once asked, "Why do you seem tired lately? If something's bothering you, just tell me. I'm okay, Dad. Probably just sleep deprived. Lately Bin hasn't been sleeping well, so I have to keep an eye on him." "Does the little one get startled often?" "Yes, but I think it's because he misses his dad." Mrs. Nam, Mr. Thuck's wife, sat at the small shop counter, handing change to a customer while chiming in. "Last night I heard him talking in his sleep. He said someone was calling from the backyard. It gave me goosebumps." Mr. Thuck chuckled. "Kids dream up things. Don't make it sound so scary. Maybe he heard some ghost stories at school and started imagining things." Duyên brought a glass of water, her hands slightly trembling. "Late last night, I really heard something, Dad, like water flowing from somewhere. I went out into the yard and saw nothing. But the smell, it was strange. Like something was rising up from underground." Mrs. Nam scoffed. "That smell must be from that septic tank. We haven't cleaned it in years, it's bound to overflow. I've said it over and over. But you never call anyone to fix it." Mr. Thuck leaned on the table and sighed. "It costs millions to clean that now. We're living day by day. Where would we find extra money? Besides, it's not that serious." Duyên looked down at the tiled floor, her lips pressed tightly. Bin, who was playing with a toy car in the corner, suddenly looked up and quietly said, "She said it's cold, Mom. She's under the ground." Everyone went silent. Mrs. Nam turned quickly. "What did you say, Ben?" "The lady in the red shirt, with long hair. She's lying under the ground. Don't make her angry. Mom, don't lock the lid again." Duyên's face turned pale as she hugged her son tightly. "Don't say such things. Who told you that? Are you repeating someone's story?" "No, I dreamt it. She's been calling my name these past few days." Mr. Thuck cleared his throat, trying to hide his unease. "Enough. Stop scaring the child or he'll think it's real. I'll check the tank lid tonight. If there's anything wrong, I'll call a repairman later." Mrs. Nam muttered, "I've never smelled anything like that in the backyard before. Something's really off." As evening fell, the soft golden sunlight stretched across the porch. Duyên stood at the back door, staring at the corner of the yard, where the cement lid had darkened with age. She said nothing, just held Bin's hand tighter. Her eyes, red from holding back tears, held a deep and quiet fear. Mr. Thuck is now over 60. His figure is thin, his skin darkened by the sun, and his hands are always stained with grease because of his job as a motorbike taxi driver around the village market. All his life, he hasn't wished for much, just a peaceful family, with children and grandchildren living in harmony. But sometimes, that peace is as fragile as the smoke from the kitchen at dusk. His house sits in a narrow alley, nestled among old tin roofs. Behind long-hung district market, the roof is covered with red tiles. The yard is paved with traditional bricks. And in the back stands a septic tank built back when his son was still alive. Built might be too generous, it's really just a simple brick pit. Topped with a cement lid and covered by 2 broken bricks. Since Hao, his son, passed away in a motorbike accident 3 years ago. Everything in the house has changed. People smiled less, meals turned cold, and time seemed to slow down. Day by day. Duyên, Hao's wife, is a gentle, quiet woman. After her husband died, she didn't leave like people gossiped. On the contrary, she stayed and cared for her in-laws as if they were her own family. Every morning, she swept the yard, cooked meals, and looked after Bin, their firstborn son. Anyone who saw her said she was lucky, being loved by her husband's family. But no one knew how many nights she couldn't sleep, how often she furrowed her brows and rubbed her temples, or how she would sit in silence for hours, staring out at the backyard. Mr. Thuk once asked, "Why do you seem tired lately? If something's bothering you, just tell me. I'm okay. Dad, probably just sleep deprived. Lately Bin hasn't been sleeping well, so I had to keep an eye on him." Does the little one get startled often? Yes, but I think it's because he misses his dad. Mrs. Nam, Mr. Thuk's wife, sat at the small shop counter, handing change to a customer while chiming in. "Last night I heard him talking in his sleep. He said someone was calling from the backyard. It gave me goosebumps." Mr. Thuk chuckled. "Kids dream up things. Don't make it sound so scary. Maybe he heard some ghost stories at school and started imagining things." Duyên brought a glass of water, her hands slightly trembling. "Late last night, I really heard something, Dad, like water flowing from somewhere. I went out into the yard and saw nothing. But the smell, it was strange. Like something was rising up from underground." Mrs. Nam scoffed. "That smell must be from that septic tank. We haven't cleaned it in years, it's bound to overflow. I've said it over and over. But you never call anyone to fix it." Mr. Thuk leaned on the table and sighed. "It costs millions to clean that now. We're living day by day. Where would we find extra money? Besides, it's not that serious." Duyên looked down at the tiled floor, her lips pressed tightly. Bin, who was playing with a toy car in the corner, suddenly looked up and quietly said, "She said it's cold. Mom, she's under the ground." Everyone went silent. Mrs. Nam turned quickly. "What did you say, Ben?" "The lady in the red shirt, with long hair. She's lying under the ground. Don't make her angry. Mom, don't lock the lid again." Duyên's face turned pale as she hugged her son tightly. "Don't say such things. Who told you that? Are you repeating someone's story?" "No, I dreamt it. She's been calling my name these past few days." Mr. Thuk cleared his throat, trying to hide his unease. "Enough. Stop scaring the child or he'll think it's real. I'll check the tank lid tonight. If there's anything wrong, I'll call a repairman later." Mrs. Nam muttered, "I've never smelled anything like that in the backyard before. Something's really off." As evening fell, the soft golden sunlight stretched across the porch. Duyên stood at the back door, staring at the corner of the yard, where the cement lid had darkened with age. She said nothing, just held Bin's hand tighter. Her eyes, red from holding back tears, held a deep and quiet fear. Duyên was still shaken after the night she heard the knocking on the tank lid. She stayed in bed for days, her body aching all over, dark circles under her eyes. Little Bin suddenly came down with a fever, mumbling in his sleep throughout the night. Several times, he jolted up, shouting, "She's standing in the corner, she's crying. Mom, lock the door." Mr. Thuk, though trying to appear strong, had started to feel rattled. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt something cold standing behind him. As for Mrs. Nam, every time she washed vegetables behind the kitchen, she felt like someone was watching her. Eventually, she decided to call a distant relative in Tianjiang, someone who happened to know a feng shui master. 3 days later, a motorbike taxi dropped the master off at the front gate. The master wore a gray traditional robe, had a small frame, and looked to be just over 50. His eyes were deep set, his forehead high, and in his hands he carried a bundle of incense sticks and a weathered, dark silver compass. Mr. Thuck greeted him warmly. "Please come inside, Master. I've heard from family that you're very gifted. Lately, something strange has been going on in our house. I hope you can take a look." The master said nothing. He simply glanced around the yard. His steps were slow, but his eyes seemed to pierce through every crack in the bricks, every dark corner, every brittle branch. When he reached the septic tank behind the house, he stopped for the longest time. His voice dropped low. "This place has been sealed, but sealed incorrectly, against the laws of nature. It's a violation." Mrs. Nom flinched. "Sealed? You mean someone put something in there?" The master didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out the bundle of incense, lit them, and planted each stick one by one around the tank. Duyên stood behind him, lips trembling. "Master, if there's something wrong, please tell us. Our house hasn't been peaceful. I'm exhausted. The child has nightmares. The tank smells horrible. I feel like this isn't normal." The master shook his head. "This isn't feng shui anymore. This is karma, and karma must be uncovered." Mr. Thuck swallowed hard. "Uncovered? You mean? Dig it up." Mr. Thuck hesitated. "That tank, it's a septic tank. It's filthy, Master. Opening it is dangerous." The master remained calm. "What's more dangerous is letting whatever's trapped down there rise. Whether you dig or not, that's your choice." No one said a word. The air grew heavy. The incense smoke, sweet but sharp, seemed to stir something deep inside each person. That evening, Mr. Thuck called a local handyman he knew. At first, the man refused. He'd heard things and didn't want to get involved. But after being offered double the usual pay, he agreed. By the third layer of bricks, a foul stench burst out. The worker gagged, threw his shovel aside, his face pale. "Sir, this isn't sewage, there's hair, and something black." Mr. Thuck shone his flashlight into the pit. In the soggy mud was a clump of jet black hair, matted and stuck to a piece of decayed red fabric. Duyên saw it, stumbled backward, then collapsed in the yard, unconscious. The feng shui master stood still, hands clasped behind his back, eyes closed. "This must be reported to the police." Mr. Thuck's voice was hoarse. "Master, could you be mistaken? What if it's just something old we threw away and forgot?" The master opened his eyes and stared straight at him. "No one throws human hair and pieces of clothing into a septic tank. This is a human body. And beneath that cement, there's more." Mr. Thuck stepped back, his legs trembling. For a fleeting moment, he clearly saw, beneath that mass of black hair, was a frail, bluish arm, with fingernails still intact, as if it had just been trying to claw its way up the edge of the tank. An hour later, the police arrived. The local police arrived first, followed by the Provincial Criminal Investigation Unit. The backyard of Mr. Thuck's house was cordoned off with red and white tape, and a temporary barricade was set up. The stench of death seeped through every crack and crevice, forcing the whole neighborhood to shut their doors and windows tight. Yet everyone still peeked toward that small house, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and dread. Inside the pit, the body was slowly lifted out from the soggy mud. It was a woman, her hands bound with torn fabric, wearing a dark red shirt now in tatters, her face no longer recognizable. Her flesh had mostly decomposed, but her long fingernails, painted in faded polish, remained visible. Beneath her, strands of black hair and a broken comb still lingered. What was strange was that, in the entire commune, no one had ever reported a missing person. No one knew who the girl was. No one recognized any familiar sign from the body. No missing persons file, no family coming to claim her. It was as if the girl had never existed in this world. Mr. Thuck sat on the porch, his face pale, his hand trembling as he held a cigarette. When the police asked him questions, all he could say was, "I don't know. I don't remember. I wasn't involved." Duyên hadn't spoken a single word since she regained consciousness. She sat in a daze, eyes vacant, staring at the pit now covered temporarily with a green tarp. She didn't touch her dinner, didn't look at anyone. Mrs. Nom cooked porridge and brought it to her daughter-in-law. "Eat a little, dear. You look so pale these days." Duyên didn't move her chopsticks. She just whispered. Did you hear her? She said, it's so cold. Mrs. Nam jolted. Who said that? The lady in red. She won't forgive us. She's come back. I told you. You all have to pay. Duyin's voice suddenly changed, raspy, strained, then burst into a dry, guttural laugh, like her throat was being squeezed from the inside. Mrs. Nam panicked, dropping the bowl of porridge onto the floor. Mr. Thuk rushed in and saw his daughter-in-law laughing with tears streaming down her face. He shouted, Duyin, what are you saying? Snap out of it. Duyin blinked, then suddenly returned to normal. Her voice trembled. Dad, what did I just say? I don't remember. Mrs. Nam pulled Mr. Thuk aside and whispered. Something's not right. Dear, she's not herself anymore. That pit, it wasn't sealed for no reason. I'm starting to feel afraid. The police pulled Mr. Thuk aside to question him about everyone who had ever lived in the house. They asked him to provide a list of temporary residents, maids, tenants, or anyone who had ever stayed there. Mr. Thuk scratched his head. I can't remember them all. We used to have a maid. But it's been a while. I forgot her name. Do you have any photos with her? Any documents? ID, phone number, or home address? No, I didn't keep anything. She left without a word. Which woman? Well, the maid, last year? I think her name was Tam or maybe Thou. The police wrote everything down and asked to review the security cameras. Old paperwork, anything that might help identify the victim. But through the mess of disorganized files and dust-covered drawers, they found nothing of value. Night fell again, and the house sank into silence, but not the peaceful kind it once knew. Around 2 in the morning, Mrs. Nam woke with a start. She had heard a faint laugh coming from the kitchen. She tiptoed out. The night light cast a dim glow across the altar. Duyin sat quietly, wearing a thin nightgown, her long hair loose, lips moving, whispering to the darkness. What are you doing, Duyin? Duyin didn't turn around. Her voice was low and eerie. Can't you hear it? She's so cold. She's about to get angry. The rain kept drizzling for days afterward. It wasn't heavy, but it was enough to let the stench from the backyard seep into every brick, every curtain, every damp piece of clothing that hadn't had a chance to dry. Inside the house, no one spoke much to each other anymore. The air itself seemed thick, heavy, almost suffocating. Little Ben was still feverish. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't take medicine. He just lay there, lifeless. And every night, right around 2 in the morning, the boy would suddenly sit up on his bed like a sleepwalker and whisper disjointed sentences. She's cold. She's curled up in the pit. She was tied up. The first time, Mrs. Nam thought it was just a bad dream. But by the third time, her hands trembled as she pulled the blanket up to her chin, eyes brimming with tears. One afternoon, Ben opened his eyes and weakly called for his mother. Mom, Duyin rushed to his side. What is it, sweetie? I saw her again. Her name is Thou. She said, she used to live here. But no one remembers her. Who, sweetheart? Don't say things like that. You're scaring me. The lady in red, she was crying, blood on her forehead. She said she was hit. She got scared, ran, then fell, then couldn't breathe anymore. She's been trapped underground for a really long time. Duyin sprang up, goosebumps covering her entire body. She clutched her child's hand tightly. Who told you this? No one. I saw it in my dream. At that same moment, the police returned to re-examine the scene. This time, they had a warrant to search the entire property. A young officer opened the door to an old storage room that hadn't been used in years, a place cluttered with junk. Dust piled thick like ash. In the dark corner, next to a pile of moldy mattresses and collapsed cardboard boxes, they found a length of rope about a meter long, with small strands of black hair still clinging to it. The musty, earthy smell filled the air, but upon comparison, the rope matched almost exactly with the cloth used to bind the hands of the corpse from the pit, in material, thread color, and the distinctive knot. The officer pulled off his gloves, his tone firm. We need Mr. Thuk's full cooperation for further examination. Mr. Thuk stood on the porch, his face blurry through a haze of cigarette smoke. He didn't answer. His dazed eyes stared toward the backyard, still cordoned off. the cement not yet re-poured. Every time he looked there, he could almost see a figure in red squatting, hair covering her face, staring straight at him. That night, he sat alone outside. The wind was cold. Rain dripped from the tin roof, tapping steadily. He mumbled, "I didn't mean to. She talked too much. She threatened me. I only pushed her a little." Mrs. Nam stood in the kitchen, frozen. Duyên stepped out, her voice soft. "Dad, I have to ask, who is thou?" He didn't turn around. His shoulders trembled. "She worked here for 3 months, then suddenly said she'd report me. She accused me. I was scared of ruining my reputation. I didn't mean to. She died, in this house. Didn't she? I only pushed her lightly. She fell, hit her head on the wall." Duyên's voice broke. "And then you hid the body? You dumped her in the septic tank?" He held his head in his hands. "I was afraid. Your mother had gone back to visit her hometown. It was just me and her. We argued. I didn't think one push." His words faltered. Inside the house, Ben suddenly burst into tears. From the upstairs room came the sound of running footsteps, followed by a terrified scream. "Mom, she's in the bathroom. She's sitting there. Blood won't stop." She looked at me. She asked why no one remembers her. The whole house fell silent, like time had stopped. Mr. Thuk couldn't stay on his feet anymore. He collapsed onto the steps, covering his face with both hands, tears seeping through his fingers like a man who had just watched his own soul being condemned. The house felt colder and colder after the day Mr. Thuk had all but confessed. Duyên began avoiding conversations with her father-in-law. Every morning, she quietly took Ben to stay with a nearby acquaintance before returning, like she feared that keeping the child in that atmosphere any longer would drag him into something beyond saving. Mrs. Nam had gone almost completely silent. No more scolding, no more trips to the little grocery stall. She sat by the window all day, staring out at the backyard, where the pit was still covered by a tarp. And beneath that layer of fabric, everyone knew, something terrifying had yet to rest. That day, the police returned for one final inspection of the house before closing the forensic report. A young officer, while scanning a flashlight under the old stove, discovered a small notebook nearly completely hidden by dust. The pages had yellowed, the soft cover torn at the edges like it had once been ripped hastily. The officer held it up and said quietly, "This might have belonged to the victim." The notebook was placed on the dining table. Each page was carefully turned. The handwriting leaned slightly, the blue ink smudged in places. Only a few lines appeared on each page, but they were chilling. "Every time I spill water by accident," he yells. "Today he looked at me strangely. I didn't dare lift my head. Sometimes I hear my name being called, even when his door is locked. I'll leave this place, if there's still time. Last night I dreamed I was buried beneath the floor." Mrs. Nam's face went pale upon reading the last line. Duyên's voice cracked. "This notebook, it's signed, thou, isn't it, officer?" The officer nodded. At the end of each page there's either the name, thou, or a circular symbol, written neatly. Like someone who's meticulous, used to journaling. Duyên covered her face. Her voice came out faint and broken. "I remember now. She was here exactly one rainy season last year. Small build, quiet, always looking down, but her hands were rough. Used to heavy work. One time, I saw her crying out back. I thought maybe she just missed home." The officer asked, "When she left, did she say why?" "No. My father-in-law said she quit suddenly. Didn't leave anything behind." The officer retrieved a document from the local police records. Inside was a short residency registration. Lati Thao. Born 1996. Hometown, Vinh Hung, Long An. Temporary address, Mr. Thuk's house, Dong Ton Hamlet, Long Hung Commune. Just one sheet of paper. After that, no other trace. Duyên stammered. "So she never left. She never actually left this house." Mr. Thuk sat in the corner, head bowed, crumpling a tissue in his hand. His eyes were cloudy, like dust had settled in them. The officer looked at him. "We need you to recall clearly. This person named Thao, did she leave the house? Was there any altercation?" Mr. Thuk murmured, as if speaking to himself. She screamed too loudly. I was afraid the neighbors would hear. I just wanted to shut her up, but she hit her head on the wall corner. There was blood. She didn't wake up. Duyên burst into tears. Why didn't you take her to the hospital? Why didn't you call anyone? He shook his head. I was just afraid of losing face, afraid of losing my reputation. I thought hiding it would be the end of it. I didn't think. That night, Duyên sat alone in the kitchen. She placed the old notebook on the table, lit an incense stick, stuck it into a small cup of rice, folded her hands. Her lips trembled. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were in that much pain. If I had asked you how you were, if I hadn't been so indifferent, maybe you wouldn't have died. Outside in the backyard, the night rain began to fall once more. But this time, no one noticed. Standing quietly in the corner of the yard was a figure in a red dress. Long hair draped over her face, silently watching the house. Ever since the diary was found, Duyên had changed completely. Not the kind of sorrow or depression she showed before, but something stranger, quiet, subtle, and unsettling. Sometimes, she would smile to herself in the middle of the night. Sometimes, while cooking, she'd suddenly drop her chopsticks and turn to ask Mrs. Nam, "Mom, did you hear someone crying in the kitchen? It's so cold. She keeps saying she's cold." At first, Mrs. Nam thought it was just nerves. But after 2 nights of seeing Duyên standing by the window, scratching her arms until they bled while mumbling like someone in a trance, "I don't want to die. I don't want to. I was tricked into dying." Mrs. Nam was truly terrified. She locked the bedroom door from outside, stuffed a prayer sheet into Duyên's pillow, and burned incense around the house. But the next morning, the incense bowl on the altar had shifted sideways. Ash scattered across the floor, as if someone had deliberately knocked it over. Mr. Thuk couldn't bring himself to look Duyên in the eye. Every time their eyes met, he flinched, not because her gaze was hateful, but because it wasn't her gaze at all. She spoke less, but when she did, her words chilled everyone to the bone. "Her pillow stinks, buried too long already. There's a rat in the storage room, it chewed on her fingernails. Where's the knife from that day? Why didn't anyone clean it? The blood's dried stiff on the blade." Mrs. Nam trembled so hard she dropped the bowl of porridge when she heard the last line. The police were still investigating, but Mrs. Nam couldn't wait anymore. She called the feng shui master. That afternoon, the master from Tianjiang returned. The moment he stepped into the yard, he looked straight at the porch and frowned. "How long have you kept it inside the house?" Mrs. Nam asked quickly. "Who do you mean, master? That's not your daughter-in-law. What's inside her is someone who died long ago, but hasn't moved on. She doesn't scream, she doesn't cry, she just stands there, eyes wide open, never blinking." Mr. Thuk snapped. "Master, that's enough. Duyên's just mentally exhausted." The master didn't reply. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brown paper bundle containing 3 dried stalks of wormwood. He placed them on the table and lit them. Acrid gray smoke curled upward. Duyên descended the stairs. Outside, the wind suddenly howled through the window gaps. She stared directly at the burning herbs, eyes unblinking. The master asked, "What's your name?" Duyên didn't answer. "What's your name?" "Thou." Her voice dropped, low and foggy. Her eyes glistened as if covered in mist. "Why are you still here? I haven't been allowed to leave. What do you want?" She stepped forward, face expressionless. "Justice. I was murdered. I was tricked. I didn't want to die." The master took half a step back. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "Who hurt you?" "Someone in this house. The one who kept calling me a slut. The one who lured me into the storage room when it was dark. The one who forced me to stay silent. The one who buried me under cement, for a year, without even a single stick of incense." Mr. Thuk collapsed to the floor, hands clutching his head. "It wasn't me. I didn't mean to." Duyên looked up. She smiled, a smile that stretched too long, but made no sound. Mrs. Nam screamed, "Master, help her. Save my child." The master's voice shook. "This is no longer a spell to bind the living. This is a rebound curse. Someone once tried to cast a sealing spell on the living, but violated sacred laws. Now, it's returned. The dead, restless, have come back, and they enter the weakest soul in the house. And the living must carry the weight. Mr. Thuck cried out. I didn't use any spell. I only asked someone to shut her up. I was afraid of losing face. The master shook his head. Your reputation may have survived, but your soul, you've already traded it away. The house no longer felt alive. Every footstep echoed across the old tile floor. Mrs. Nam no longer dared to speak. Duyên drifted in and out of lucidity. And Mr. Thuck, since that confrontation with the feng shui master, just sat in the corner of the house. Not eating, not speaking, not sleeping, but at night, one could still hear him murmuring, like he was talking to his own guilt. The district police held an interrogation at the house, since Mr. Thuck's mental state was deemed unstable. But it was during that very session that he suddenly broke down and confessed everything. His voice choked. That night I had been drinking. It was an old friend's birthday. I came home late. Thao was still awake, washing clothes in the backyard. She was wearing a nightgown. I saw her. I couldn't control myself. The officer asked, "Did you assault her?" He shook his head, his voice barely audible. "I only grabbed her, didn't do anything yet." Then she screamed, said she'd call the police. She'd tell her family. I panicked. I covered her mouth, pulled her into the storage room. She struggled hard. I pushed her away. Her head hit the corner of the wooden shelf. There was blood. I thought she was just stunned. I didn't know. She stopped breathing. No one spoke. Duyên sat slumped at the table's edge, arms over her head, trembling. One officer said in a low tone, "Why didn't you call for help? Or take her to the hospital?" I was scared. She was dead. I panicked. I was afraid the neighbors would find out. Afraid of rumors. Afraid of shame. Being labeled the pervert Thuck who killed a girl. I couldn't bear that. I just wanted to hide it. "What did you do with the body?" I called Duyên. She was horrified. She cursed me. But then, she went quiet. The two of us talked, and decided to put her in the septic tank. Why the septic tank? Because no one had touched it in over 10 years. I thought no one would ever find out. Why did you scatter salt over it? Duyên said, if we didn't do a sealing ritual, she'd come back. So she brought salt, alcohol, even hammered a nail into the tank lid, like in those ghost stories people tell. I did what she said. I didn't dare ask questions. Duyên looked up. Her eyes were red, her voice hoarse. I was terrified. I didn't know what else to do. Dad said if this got out, our family would be ruined. I was scared. I was stupid, so I followed along. The officer asked again, "So both of you helped cover up the body? Is that correct?" Duyên nodded, wringing her hands. I only helped tie the fabric. I couldn't look at her face, but I could hear her fingernails scratching at the tank lid. In that moment, the air felt like it had been sucked out of the room. Outside, the wind howled. The sky turned gray, as if it no longer wanted to witness anything more. But it wasn't over. The feng shui master spoke again. "Do you know? Thou died in anguish. No one saw her off. Not a single incense stick. Not a word of apology. When she was sealed inside, her eyes were still open. Her soul never left her body. She was buried alive beneath cement and fear." Mr. Thuck screamed, "That's enough. I know I was wrong. But why won't she forgive me? I can't live like this anymore." The master pointed toward the door. "Because the truth hasn't been fully told. Because your sin is still being labeled as a mistake. There is no mistake that kills a person. Only cruelty and cowardice." Mrs. Nam burst into tears and clutched her daughter-in-law tightly. Little Bin stood behind the curtain, eyes wide, holding a small Buddha statue someone had once placed at the head of his bed. The boy whispered, "Mom, she hasn't gone anywhere. She's still in the bathroom, she's still crying." The day they brought Mr. Thuck to the district police station for further questioning, it rained again, a steady, soaking rain, just like the day they pulled Thao's body from the septic tank. That made everyone in that little house feel a chill deep down in their bones. Inside the interview room, a faint yellow light fell across Mr. Thuck's exhausted face. His hair was disheveled, his lips cracked, eyes sunken and ringed with dark circles. In front of him was the statement form. Beside him sat the investigator. calmly asking each question. What is your full name? I'm Nguyen Van Thuck. Do you admit involvement in the death of Lati Thao? No, I didn't mean to. But she's standing right there, don't you see her? She's right behind you. It's Thao, she hasn't left. The officer glanced toward the stenographer and gave a subtle nod. They knew he was slipping. But his face no longer showed just fear of being arrested. It was fear of being followed. Where are you looking? She's staring at me. Her eyes are wide open. Unblinking, she's right behind your chair. She's asking me, why did I bury her underground? Why didn't I light even one stick of incense? Do you need a break? No, keep asking. I have to say it. I have to tell everything, or she'll follow me home. She told me. I have to tell the truth. The officer gently slid a tissue across the table to him. You've already shared a lot. We're documenting everything carefully. But just to be clear, do you confirm that on the night of the incident, you pushed the victim, leading to her death, and then helped hide the body with your daughter-in-law? I confirm. I did it. I killed her. I put her in the tank. I sealed her with salt. With nails. With a promise never to say a word. If she hadn't threatened you, would you have harmed her? I don't know. I was drunk. I was scared, but that fear killed someone. I don't deserve to be called human. In the room next door, Duyên sat quietly as the forensic psychiatrist assessed her mental state. She curled into an old fabric-covered chair. Her gaze vacant. Her pale lips formed a faint smile. Though no one knew who it was for. Do you know where you are right now? Yes, at the station. Because I'm an accomplice. Have you experienced anything unusual these past few days? Yes, I've seen her. Every night. Wet hair. Barefoot. Eyes open. She doesn't blame me. She just asks, why doesn't anyone remember my name? The doctor jotted down a few notes. Then asked one final question. Were you ever pressured or threatened by anyone in the family? Yes, by silence. By my father-in-law's eyes. By myself. I didn't dare speak. Didn't dare think. Didn't dare cry. I locked myself under that cement lid the same night she did. After days of evidence gathering, authorities concluded the case was manslaughter without prior intent. However, the act of concealing the body and deliberately hiding the truth had escalated the crime's severity. Duyên was ordered to undergo regular psychiatric evaluation. Mr. Thuck was held in detention, awaiting trial. Outside, the rain still hadn't stopped. People passing by Mr. Thuck's house avoided looking for too long. They said that once, the light in the back room was seen glowing even though no one was home. Others whispered that, on gloomy days, they sometimes heard faint crying from the backyard. But no one dared to get close. An elderly neighbor sighed. This whole thing, if it weren't for that strange smell, no one would have ever known. Another neighbor chimed in. But honestly, what if that smell didn't come from the body? What if it came from the dead, trying to be found? 2 months after the final interrogation, Mr. Thuck passed away in the detention center due to heart failure. No one came to claim his body, except for Mrs. Nam, hands trembling as she held the official papers. Tears streaming down her cheeks. But not a single sound came out. The funeral was held quietly, lasting less than an afternoon. The plywood coffin was temporarily placed in the old kitchen, once filled with clattering pots. The footsteps of housemaids, now just the scent of incense and the musty dampness embedded in the walls. Mrs. Nam stood beside the altar, lighting one final stick of incense for her husband. I know you were wrong, but I also know you weren't a cruel man. You just made the wrong choice. And that choice was too heavy for anyone to bear. No one answered, only the wind slipped through the door, flipping the corner of the still wet funeral notice. Duyên was transferred to the provincial psychiatric hospital. The doctors said she suffered from severe trauma. Every time she heard the sound of running water, she would curl up in fear. Every time someone in red walked by, she would scream and retreat to the corner of her bed like she wanted to disappear. Mrs. Nam visited her, bringing a box of her favorite pastries. Duyên didn't eat. She just stared at her, whispering, "She forgave me, but I don't dare look in the mirror. I'm afraid I'll see a face that isn't mine." Little Bin was sent to live with Mrs. Nam. The child had become quiet and obedient. On his first night back in the house, He refused to sleep in the bed. He insisted on lying on the floor, facing the wall. Mrs. Nam asked, "Why don't you sleep in bed?" He whispered, "Because Miss Thao is sitting there. She keeps smiling, but I'm afraid she's sad." From then on, every night, Bin slept face down. One evening, Mrs. Nam saw him quietly take a piece of paper and scribble crooked lines. "Miss Thao, I miss you. Please don't be mad at my mom anymore." The septic tank in the backyard was sealed up, filled with concrete, and topped with a stone table, some kind of half-believed ritual of protection. Bamboo plants were planted around it, to block the wind, so no one could clearly see that corner of the yard anymore. But for some reason, whenever it rained, even just lightly, when the ground turned damp, old too, the neighbor would wake up startled in the middle of the night. He said, "I heard it clearly, like someone scratching under the cement. Scratching with fingernails, slow, steady, not hurried, not weak, just relentless." People said the old man must have been sleepwalking, but Mrs. Nam had heard it too. On a windy night, while she was sitting and praying, a chill ran down her spine. The wind wasn't strong, but the altar shook, and there was a voice, a whisper behind her neck. "I don't want to be forgotten." Some suggested building a proper altar for Thao, but Mrs. Nam didn't dare. Others said to just let things fade, that the dead, no matter how wronged, should be allowed to rest. But do they really rest? A death met with silence, a soul trapped where no one knew, a memory torn halfway, a little notebook no one ever fully read, a fear buried under layers of cement, just waiting for the rain to fall, to rise again. Maybe the scariest thing isn't ghosts, but the silence of the living, a silence so deep that, if not for that strange smell, she might never have been found. The story has ended, but its echoes may still linger within each of us. Some secrets stay buried for years, until the rain comes and washes out the cost of silence. Some confessions need no courtroom, because the darkness is already the final judge. And some souls don't need to appear. They only need to be remembered, to continue existing. If you found this story thought-provoking, if you want to stay with us for more haunting and emotional journeys like this, right finger hit that subscribe button, so you won't miss the next series we'll tell, with all our heart. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We'll see you, after the next rain. Cloud with rain.